In this world, it is a secret that can only be used by people of the chosen lineage. This is an indisputable natural law. The poor could never expect to use it. In a world dominated by natural selection, the boy was lying on his face alone. The boy was lying down, and two adults were on top of him with their fists tight. They called him a rat because he dared to decorate their food. It's time to pay your bills. One of the adults kicked the kid in the stomach. The second also joined the fun business. The kid thought when he decided to steal, he was ready to die. He was so hungry that in other days he would never need food again. He had a lot to say. Tired of beating him, one of his attackers asked if he had any excuse for what he had done. The boy looked up and thought the world was cruel. While others live in warm houses, he and the other orphans have to live near death every day. The aristocrats are what they call blessed people from birth. You will never know such a life. Since he remembered, all the food he saw was his waste. He was always ready for it. The people who are beating him now could have easily killed him. He was tired of it. But he was tired of losing. The kid decided he wouldn't run away again. He won't run away from the world anymore. Suddenly, all its negative energy that had accumulated over the years spread. Two adults flew several meters and hit the wall of the building. They were surprised. Is that really magic? But magic is only available to nobles. How did that bastard manage to use it? The boy himself was also surprised. Was it really magical? Of course, only nobles can use magic. But he heard about cases where the commoners suddenly gained magical abilities. One of the adults asked the boy if he was of the cursed lineage. The kid didn't answer, but he got off the sidewalk and left. He didn't have a specific route, just ran blindly straight into the darkness. Something told him if he got caught again, then on the right, he'd disappear. It was getting cold outside. The light was dark in the boy's eyes, and his head was blurry. He was sitting on the wall of a building, thinking that's how it was gonna end. So a man in expensive clothes came to him. He looked at the boy and said he had good eyes, but he seemed pathetic. Malnutrition, another severe form of burn, maybe besides the loss of feeling the finger feeling, broken ribs. The man sighed and told the boy he had two options and it was his choice. He could die on the side of the road like the last mud, or he could go with him and live like a murderer. He didn't know what the man meant by a murderer. But deep down he knew that if he stayed here under this winter sky, he would never be able to rise again. The boy fought to reach the unknown. He said it looked like they had a deal with him. So he asked if he had a name. The man was very persistent and direct. He knew the kid's voice was gone, but he asked for his name anyway. Cough. The kid barely called your name ours. The stranger held him and said that as of today, he was your son. If that old man hadn't found him that day, 10 years ago, he would have died on the street. And now Ars Vilsard works in the shadow of the city like a magician. It can be found where it smells of blood and is dominated by smoke, time. The place doesn't matter to him. Following orders to kill complete strangers was a new life given to him by that old man. This place is Perikinos, a dark city, a mysterious city that is covered in darkness and hidden from sunlight, close streets shaded by tall buildings, like dead walls, let in only small glimpses of light, creating a threatening atmosphere. Here time passes differently, as if captured by a series of endless alleys, each of which seems to lead to an infinite void. Dark shadows, like living beings, hide the city's secrets and hide the worst human fears and desires. Perikinos has become a place where it is difficult to distinguish between good and evil, where the lines between morality and immorality disappear. The eternal night of this city transforms it into a place where illusions come true, and reality becomes an illusion. If you listen carefully, you can hear the whisper of shadows that carry conversations, agreements, and intrigues. Each corner of the city keeps secrets, keeping residents and visitors in guard and ready to face the darkness lurking in their own hearts. The worst human qualities permeate this city through and through, and to maintain public order, they made a contract with a certain alliance of nameless sorcerers. Gregory Scanner would never expect to be cornered that fast. He, 38 double, 2-star aristocrat with connections in the illegal slave business, although he had already been arrested 4 times. always evaded punishment thanks to his noble origin. That person more than deserves to be on the guild's list of interests. Gregory was sitting in a crowded chair in his office, smoking a cigar and looking intently at the man in front of him. As the Nighthawk guy, he knows that. He disappears into darkness without leaving a trace when the work is done. That's why he has his nickname. It's very fast and very quiet. A killer with a real warrant. Arsvilsard replied calmly that in fact they call him Nighthawk. But he doesn't like that nickname. A very good killer does his job in total privacy. And as soon as he got that nickname, he realized it was still too green. Gregory Scanner raised his hands and said he heard Nighthawk was killing his victims in an instant. He suggested that the killer finish faster. Gregory Scanner knew Nighthawk had come to him, and that was bad luck. That was the end of his luck. Meanwhile, Arsvils had a bad feeling. It's been in his mind since he walked into this room. Gregory Scanner is a nobleman observed by the organization. So where are his guards? This person likes drama, looks like he's in jail. As if he heard his thoughts, guards armed with revolvers entered the four-direction room. They couldn't let their master die. The shrewd noble man hid his guards for now. A fine smile touched Arsvilsard's lips. Strengthening magic and steel skin helped the young deal with Scanner Gregory's bodyguards. After all, it is not necessary to use mega-pretentious magic to kill a person. Only 9 millimeters of lead does a great job. Gregory Scanner was not impressed by the deaths of the 4 guards. He leaned on the couch and said it looked like it was all the famous Nighthawk could do. Too bad. Suddenly a flat gun appeared in his hands, but Arsvils was prepared for such a change. If a trap that level could kill him, then he wouldn't be able to survive in this world for 10 years. Gregory Scanner's gun was probably in the hands of Nighthawk, whose barrel he placed against the nobleman's forehead. The nobleman whistled in anger that Ars was just a brat. The young man agreed with him. He said it was like this. Gregory Scanner's head got shot, fell limping on the expensive couch. The most intimate secret in this world is that only the chosen of the lineage can use magic. The poor never expect to use it. But the cursed bloodline is an exception. The dry sound of a shot touched over the deserted street of Perikinos. That marked the end of Arsvilsard's mission at the Gregory Scanner mansion. Ars put the gun down and thought it was over here. He just stayed to get out of here. Suddenly he felt the presence of magic. Reinforcements have arrived in the room. He was a member of the Sorcerer Guild Siaka, nicknamed Buffalo. Ars said that's not necessary. They are leaving. The dark city of Perikinos was a special city. The multitudes that persist even in the dark gave this city another name, the city in which there is no night. In this black-painted town, anyone can live as they please. The dark city of Perikinos became a kind of anomalous phenomenon, magically permeated by the essence of darkness. This is a place where agitation persists even in the darkest hours, as if the inhabitants of the city had signed a contract over time, making it impossible to slow down. This town doesn't know at night. Its streets are lit with pale lights and the sparkling lanterns that cast their shadows over the facades of the buildings. There is an atmosphere of freedom and self-expression. Perikinos became a refuge for those who rejected conventional standards and decidedly chose the path of individualism. In this city, race, nationality, or age don't matter. Here, everyone can wear their own mysterious fantasy, blending in with the general mask of the dark city. Nightclubs and mysterious bars attract freedom-loving souls with their magnetism, giving them the opportunity to get lost in the shadow dance and enjoy the moment of eternity. The dark city attracts artists, philosophers, and those who seek inspiration in the depths of their soul. However, there is a danger behind all this freedom. The Dark Ones can find their adherents among those who seek to live out of social ties. The Wizard Guild, under contract with the city government, ensures that dark passions do not go beyond control and that everyone can enjoy their freedom without becoming a toy in the hands of darkness. Arsvilsard and Sayaka were moving along the street of this city after leaving the crime scene. Bible asked, "That's why you still use firearms. Wouldn't it be easier for a wizard like to end them with magic?" The young man replied that to him guns are nothing but garbage, but using magic, he leaves traces wherever he uses them. Arsvilsard says he also finds magic very practical. All you need is your body, and after some training sessions, it will become much more useful than any weapon. Magic energy is a concentration of personal information, so he better leave as little as possible. Besides, counting on magic to commit murder is a thing of the past. Modern magic research to kill now is more like the devil's whisper. So Sayaka saw strange metal birds in the air. He said, "What the hell is that?" Ars Vilsard replied it was an advanced magic weapon. Automatic tracking device. Look for traces of magic and pursue the target with restraint. He suggested that this device follows Sayaka's magical energy. Bible said no one would care if he shot them. Ars Vilsard noted that this statement was expected from someone who joined the guild at such a young age. The magic energy of the fireball flew towards those birds. However, some managed to escape Magi Sayaka. Ars Vilsard noticed they wouldn't go far if they kept attacking them from the front. Sayaka asked how he would get rid of them. Ars replied that it made no sense. They could feel their magical energy. If this goes on, hell never hit them. So the quickest way is to use your skills against them. Target is 100 meters away. Ars Vilsard pulled a gun and said this is the most reliable method. The first 2 bullets were filled with magic energy. They were needed to make the target move in the direction he needed to go. These weapons are very sensitive to magical energy and can easily avoid magical attacks. But without it, they turn into stupid garbage. The other 6 are ordinary bullets fired to kill. Sayaka exclaimed happy that it was simply incredible. Ars Vilsard destroyed all 6 birds at once. The young man lowered his gun and said that this pathetic fart has a right to exist. Hidden in the depths of the dark city, the Yggdrasil Tavern for travelers has been popular with many guild members. Inside, the atmosphere was noisy and fun. Ars Vilsard was sitting at the table with his father. The old man said, lovingly looking at the young man, that he was improving and improving lately. Ars noticed Dad was already pretty drunk. His name was Genos Vilsard. He caressed the young men on the shoulder and said that even the superiors were confused about today's goal. He expressed confidence that they would be delighted. Genos Vilsard worked as a link between the organization and the state. He also worked as a murderer under the name Gold Lion, but decided to retire to train Ars Vilsard. Genos told him it's been 10 years since he started working. Aristocrats, royalty, magicians, and even holy knights. Has killed so many people in 10 years. In a drunken voice, the old man asked if he remembered how many people he had killed. The young man replied that he had lost count for a long time and asked when the next job would be. After taking a sip of his glass, Genos stated that he was considering giving up orders for a while and send him to school. Ars Vilsard was surprised to ask why he decided to do this. The old man replied that there was nothing better than being qualified as a wizard if he were to live in this town. Reputation is the key to success, according to large companies. By the way, Sayaka has already received a license. Has a licensed magician now. It also means they believe in him less than Sayaka. The old man said that after that incident 3 years ago, it was getting harder and harder for them to find a job. The largest anti-government organization in Dark City is the Reverse Crown. The anger endured by your actions 3 years ago still remains in the hearts of many people. After the incident was resolved, the inverted corona slowly began to disappear until it completely disappeared, which in turn helped improve security within the Black City. The world is approaching the long-awaited calm. At this rate, unlicensed mages like he can run out of money. Ars Vilsard says he refuses. He had already forgotten that he was only 15, and most normal children at his age went to school. The old man looked his son in the eye and said it wasn't a request, it was an order. He can't refuse. Ars closed his eyes. The main disadvantage in the organization, orders are absolute and not discussed. Right now, Genos started molesting a client. Ars Vilsard thought the old man was already drunk. He'll have to take care of that drunk. The waitress pointed out to the old man that he was bothering other clients with his behavior. Genos jumped out of the seat and hit the girl in the face. He shouted that no matter where he went, they despised him just because he was a commoner. Isn't she a commoner too? He doesn't even get the proper service because he's not an aristocrat. The girl tried to justify herself, but the old man didn't hear her and sent for more drinks. Ars Vilsard thought that here was another who was not happy with his status as a commoner, as is often found in such places. This world is unfair. However, he is well aware of how he feels. He knows there's no excuse for him taking his anger out on others. The old man kept fighting. He said their job is to keep peace and quiet in this town. So he took a bottle and broke it on the edge of the table and threatened everyone. Ars Vilsard was forced to use magical school skills, arm strength, to overthrow the old man. He laid him on the floor of the establishment and twisted his arm back. The old man praised him and said it was a good job, even out of work hours. Then he told the young man that he had left some papers at home so that he could look at them carefully later. This is a list of schools where he has a good chance of passing the entrance exam. Meanwhile, the girl thanked Ars for his help, and the young man said thank you for the food. He thought his father was interested in his son's future, but he was already having a headache just thinking about starting school or taking tests. It's been 2 months since Gino Vilsard gave it. It's the job to get into school. The true spring has come, the moment when a new life flourishes. Ars Vilsard arrived in Midgard, the royal capital located near the Black City. It's the largest city in the country. Ars Vilsard passed the streets of the capital, going to the monumental building of the Royal Academy of Magic. Every step I took, I felt a magical energy floating in the air, like a harbinger of mysterious knowledge and unknown forces. The main facade of the academy stood in front of him, as if inviting him to enter and plunge into the world of magic. The Royal Academy of Magic at Midgard was famous for its only training program, which included ancient rituals and modern techniques. It was a place where magic became an integral part of student life, and students gained not only knowledge, but also the ability to apply it in practice. He arrived at the Royal Academy of Magic. Of all the possible options, he chose this particular magic academy, and there were 2 reasons for that. The first is the price. Education here is 10 times cheaper than other schools. For a school that only the rich attend, it is ironic that all facilities are financed by taxpayers. Outside the academy building, the young man noticed a large crowd of candidates who were nervous and worried about the next tests. The second reason is the placement. Perfect location. On foot from the capital and only 10 minutes' walk from its apartment in the slums. This school, with all its advantages, undoubtedly attracts a large number of promising students. It seems that almost all the bigwigs of high society are gathered here. Ars Vilsard, looking at the great crowd at the gates of the academy, thought, so everyone here is an aristocrat. It's very easy to distinguish an aristocrat from a commoner. Those who have medals near their necklaces are aristocrats, while those who do not have are obviously commoners. Of course, there are those who choose not to show them and just mix with the crowd, but such people are usually associated with the underground world. Suddenly Ars heard that some kind of fight was being planned. He heard someone fighting about a student's low status. He reflected that he was not anxious to have problems from day one. However, he came to the scene of the fight. The participants were a young man and a girl. The young man accused her of being a star. The girl opposed him. What does that mean? Doesn't a star have the right to attend the academy? Where's that written? An aristocratic young man shouted that it was not written anywhere. But she must consider a point. The reason for the existence of the aristocratic class. They are 3-star elite hotels with their own territories and commercial connections. So there are 2-star hotels, like the middle class, with their own lands. And deep down, they're aristocrats of a landless star. Of course, everyone here is 2 or 3 stars. And he added that this is much more than just written rules. This is the meaning of noble duty. The only star cannot cross Lord Delic. She must know her place. Let him remember that and get out of here. Delic approached the girl and said that in this society, the stars mean everything. Those with few stars will always be under those with more. He was surprised that something so basic went through it. Ars Vilsard modestly approached and asked what had happened, and the lord thought presumptuously that she was the girl who had already closed down completely. Arsu was answered by the girl's friend. She said she was molested as soon as she got here. The selfish blonde DeLuca was especially good at it. Ars Vilsert understood that such people think the world revolves around them. For aristocrats, this is a common line of thought. Meanwhile, the insolent lord continued to bother the girl. He said challenging a 3-star would get out of her way. But if she became your wife, maybe he had a plan. A friend thought this reckless guy was picking up girls before the exam. How much he earns from himself. Ars Vilsert apologized and asked her to back off. He didn't want to waste time in love fights. Right now, one of the nobles noticed the young man's collar. There's no stars. The students were surprised. What's a commoner doing here? Ars Vilsert was forced to stop. Did he ask if a commoner is that rare? Frankly speaking, he thought all these aristocrats gathered in one place was a stranger phenomenon. Deluc looked at Ars Vilsert and said that even a commoner without stars dared to cross him. He must know his place. What the hell was he doing here? Ars said he just came to take the test. That's all. How can there be another reason? Many people were outraged. Is this guy serious? A commoner will take the test. Is that legal? He thought it wasn't their fault they were lost. The Royal Academy doesn't have a class distribution. This is one of the few schools where the entrance is open to all visitors. On paper, that's true. But in reality, no commoner has entered here yet, and now a commoner is taking the test. Deluc said in anger that he had never experienced such humiliation before. He didn't find anything from their sacred academy. Ars Vilsert replied that this is what he calls humiliation. He definitely lived his life in an incubator. Deluc said he would teach you to respect the power of aristocracy. Then he drew his sword. The whole crowd supported the lord and asked him to punish the reckless man. How dare you defy the aristocracy? He doesn't belong here. Let him go. Ars Vilsert looked the evil lord in the eye and said he should know that drawing a sword in the middle of the street is dangerous. Deluc told him not to say anything, because he was a commoner. Had ended now. Ars asked why he didn't start. Did your legs get cold feet? Your threats, without intent to kill, are simply ridiculous. The moment the angry lord attacked the youth with his sword ready, he activated the magic of enchantment, the spell of resistance. Ars Vilsert took the invitation card with 2 fingers and held it to find the assailant's blade. Deluc's punch was stopped by this little piece of paper. Ars quietly said that this noble academy has a high-quality role. He thought his magic still had a long way to go. He asked the lord what had happened. Didn't he want to end it? Deluc's anger has deepened. He asked how much longer he was going to make a clown out of him. The girl who was molested by DeLuca couldn't understand what was happening now. Your sword's strokes are in the air. There were many things she didn't understand, but one thing she was sure about was that this guy was the strongest. Deluc wondered why he couldn't do anything. This commoner leads the game and looks like he's holding on. What's he so afraid of? But it's no use dragging this fight. The lord has launched a deadly attack. Ars Vilsert made a finger-strengthening technique and hit his opponent in the ear. Deluc fell on his back, his blade flying away. Holding his head in his hands, he asked Ars, what did he do? The young man replied that he only clicked. Deluc tried to get up, but found out he couldn't move. Ars Vilsert calmly said that he simply paralyzed his semicircular channel, but he will soon recover. After that, the young man thought this problem was over and there was no reason to stay here. He wanted to leave, but he was caught by the girl Deluc was bothering. The area where Ars Vilsert and the girl were staying was called the assessment area. This area was intended for training. The girl apologized and asked the young man to give her a minute of her time. She said her name was Rena and she'd like to thank him for what he did before. Ars looked into the girl's eyes and it seemed to him that he had seen her somewhere before. He told Rena not to worry, he was a better target, that's all. Right now, Rena's friend, whose name was Street, came to them. She asked the young man to say his name. He introduced himself and asked, "Aren't you both aristocrats of a star?" Street replied that the truth was that both were very excited, as students of a star, if they really could take the exam. But when they saw him, they were able to gather courage. Ars Vilsert asked if students of a star are placed in a worse position in the exam. Rena replied that it was true. Only in very rare cases only 1 star passed the exam. This means that to pass, they must show impressive results. At this moment, there was a high call for the examiners to gather in the central square. It was Professor Bubahara. He addressed all the candidates and said he would be their examiner, and eagerly waited for their success at the academy. This academy was built on the principles of meritocracy, the principle of management, according to which leadership positions should be occupied by the most capable people, regardless of their social origin and financial wealth. So he won't carry them with written tests. Whether they pass or not will depend on the results of 2 practical tests. The examiner asked them to pay attention to what he had prepared for them. If they can hit the magic target, then they've passed. If not, then you failed the exam. The old man pointed out 2 targets that were put on rocks. Ars Vilsard wanted to know if this test was too easy. Bubahara continued, everyone has 3 attempts, so they should try to activate their magic and target. As sure every examiner can get in. In his words, many nobles responded with dissatisfaction. They said the target is too far away and the concession exam is too difficult. Ars Vilsard wanted to know what kind of nonsense they were talking about. In real combat, there is no target standing. What's the point of hitting a target that doesn't move? In the world of real combat, where dynamism and unpredictability become key factors, there is no place for permanent goals. In this harsh environment, where every second can mean the difference between life and death, a static target becomes a dead target. In combat environments, survival often depends on the ability to quickly adapt to changing environments and respond effectively to new threats. Hitting a moving target requires a fighter to be able to detect, assess the situation and react quickly. He really didn't understand what was going on in the minds of these aristocrats. However, the examination began. Ars Vilsard was surprised by the poor preparation of the candidates. In addition to the fact that few people hit the target, it still takes about 20 seconds to place the magic circle. In a real fight, this means giving your opponent 20 seconds of preparation. Turns out he overestimated his colleague's skills. The magicians of the Black World he grew up and were real professionals hired by high-ranking noblemen. The combat skills of these children, who grew up without knowing the adversities, can only be equated to the initial stage of magical training. The 2 most marked girls were Rin and Ryua. Ars Vilsard thought that only these 2 could be considered acceptable. Examiner Bubahara praised them and expressed grief that such talents were a star. Ars, examined number 398 was the last exam. Bubahara face as Ars Vilsard entered the firing position. Whispered in anger that he was that stupid commoner who dared to put his foot down in this gym. He told the young man he had a chance. If he wants to pass the next stage, then he only has one chance to pass this test. Bubahara warned you. It wasn't too late for him to drop the test and leave. The young man thought if he hit the target, all this harassment would never stop. At the same time, he knew not to stand out because of his work. But if he wants to pass, he has to show an impressive amount of force. He concentrated and released a fireball. Everyone was really stunned and only the ruthless and powerful. Ars Vilsard was proud, looking at the place where there was no sign of the magic circle. There was a murmur of surprise among the participants. What the hell was that explosion? Was it a fireball? Has anyone seen the magic circle? Is that lawless magic? But that's not possible. Isn't that an urban legend? Ars Vilsard thought this wasn't magic. As you can see, this is magic without using a magic circle. But unfortunately, there's not something that impressive, it's just a normal magic that's activated by a normal magic circle, although its activation time takes only 1/10 of a second. As a result, this student without combat experience feels as if magic appears without the magic circle. Bubahara's examiner asked the young man what he allowed himself to do. He's not just going to trick you. Even the fact that he uses such magic without a magic circle is impossible. He must have used some kind of trick. Ars Vilsard replied that he still doesn't see anything shameful about her. In the end, he completed the task. He believes that this fixation on the method, rather than the result, is a sign of nobility. The former examiner ordered him to use magic properly this time. Otherwise, he would be disqualified immediately. Ars Vilsard realized this guy wanted him to build the magic circle properly. Well then, it was your duty as a murderer to meet your client's request. First, he will draw the base circle of the fireball as a base. This magic circle is a simple way that beginners learn often. It'll set the load speed to maximum. With the foundation set, it wouldn't be a problem for him to put some more spells on top. Maximum power, spell form, spear type. Someone in the crowd urged others to pay attention to this magical circle. How big are you going to get? Ars Vilsard asked the examiner. Is the circle big enough now? The old man said he was bluffing. This circle must be full of mistakes, and hell end up missing. The young man thought with boredom that this examiner would not admit no matter what, but since he insists, he decided to show them the final magic. Gungner. The explosion was so strong that all the tests were on the floor, and he still managed to avoid a catastrophe thanks to the fact that he rewrote the formula in the last second. But if he hadn't, there'd be countless casualties. Bubahara was so surprised he couldn't say a word. Was this guy really a commoner? At this moment, the young man approached the old examiner and asked if he was able to enjoy his magic. The old man was forced to admit that exam number 398 Ars Vilsard had successfully passed the first test. In the second test, Ars looked face-to-face again. After passing the first test, Ars Vilsard went to the basement of the academy. The first test led to the fact that more than 400 candidates, at least 100 remained. There was a double underground arena in the basement. No one would have thought such a structure was hidden under the academy. Bubahara announced that the second test will focus on fencing. This time, they will use weapons prepared to fight each other. The examiner offered to look at the results of his many years of training, so he ordered everyone to take his weapons, swords. The old man turned to Ars Vilsard and said that in the last test he had the audacity to mock him. He imagines how furiously he trained to turn fire magic into his own trick. He had seen some sick mages like him who were good at just one thing. Bubahara expressed the hope that he would not be ashamed on the spot. In this world, there is no commoner who is superior to an aristocrat. They shouldn't exist. Ars Vilsard had to admit that his words were not far from the truth. After that, the old man announced that he would now begin to announce his opponents. He said those students his naming now should take a step forward. He announced that number 398 and number 4 would fight first. Number 4 was Diluc. With an unpleasant smile, he approached the young man and said he was very happy to see him in this arena. He never thought he'd be able to restore his honor so quickly. Looking at the arena, Bubahara boasted while waiting for this daring commoner to be put in his place. It was immediately clear to Ars Vilsard that Diluc had something to do with this examiner. From what he found out, there seems to be a loophole in this school, thanks to which many students were able to enter with the help of bribes. He was 100% sure they were both in league. Meanwhile, the old man declared the battle open. Diluc immediately loaded. Ars noticed that the swords were severed, so they couldn't be killed. But still, it was still a big piece of metal that man was swinging. If he exaggerates, he could have serious problems. Diluc invited the young man to draw his sword. Ars Vilsard guessed that this was an obvious attempt at provocation, but he had to participate. This is a sword test, so he'll have to draw his sword. Ars escaped the coup de Diluc, but his own sword was broken. Looks like your sword doesn't meet the standards. No matter how you looked at him, this blow wasn't strong enough to break his sword. As he thought, Diluc knew from the beginning that this would happen. He was working with the examiner and damaged his sword, an insidious trick to beat him for sure. A proud aristocrat threw it in the face of the young man who's been practicing swordsmanship since he was 5. Ars Vilsard remembered that when his father picked him up on the street and began his murderous training, he was the same age. Ars had to maneuver to avoid getting hit by Diluc. He was teasing him, he was running like a rat. Has he lost his nerve seeing true skill? Ars Vilsard thought it was true that he had something to brag about. But all these book techniques would be of little use in real combat. Diluc informed his opponent that it would end him here and now. Diluc threw himself into the attack. He thought he'd picked a good time. Ars took Diluc's gun out of his hands with the broken piece of his sword and struck Diluc's jaw hard. The sound of the impact reverberated on the arena like a nearby thunder. Deluck, under the impact of the mighty blow, staggered back, staggering by the force of the blow. His jaw throbbed with pain, and his eyes were filled with anger and confusion. I could hear your heavy breathing. For the next step, he said that's what breaking up means. If he finally realizes, then don't let him repeat those words again. Abahara thought he didn't need a gun to defeat an opponent. Even with a broken sword, he made the opponent feel his intent to kill, so most people would freeze instead. The old man was forced to announce that Deluck was eliminated, and Ars Vilsert became the winner of the duel. He was glad he passed the test now, but would he really be able to get into the academy? Of course, he proved his abilities, but there was still a shadow of doubt in his heart. Anyway, the examination of the problem has finally come to an end. 5 hours after the entrance exam, a meeting was being held in the conference room of the Royal Academy of Magic. Lyara, a teacher at the Royal Academy of Magic, who was reviewing Ars Vilsert's personal file, said that having such magical skills, despite her position, is simply incredible. Abahara said annoyingly that this was absurd. Would you allow a commoner to attend school on an equal footing with his children? This will have a detrimental effect on themselves. They cannot accept such a student. Lyre contradicted him. People like him can give new life to the academy. They must accept. Still, the forum came to the conclusion that this dispute will lead to nothing, since they could not make a general decision. According to school rules, they are required to vote. 4 members of the meeting were for and 5 against. It seemed that the matter could be considered closed. Abahara seemed pleased. Even imagining a commoner studying in this academy is simply absurd. Lyra thought those against it were the old conservative academy school. She heard that some of them helped students sign up for bribes. At that moment, Abahara breathed a sigh of relief and declared that everyone would only benefit if everything remained as it was. But then Lyra turned to him and said there was someone else whose opinion they didn't hear. She turned to the director with a request to express her opinion. He is known as a member of the Royal Knights, a peace organization that is run by royal capital. Like an underground magician, he has considerable influence around the world. Now, everything depended on that person. The Duke Director of the Royal Academy of Magic did not like it and said it has been a while since he heard the name Vilsert. The Vilsert of Geno, the Sacred Knight, is known for his legendary exploits. Some say he alone defeated an army of over 100 magicians without suffering any harm. Others still say he killed a colossal dragon with a single spell, and there are many stories about Geno's power to tell. But still, one day he just disappeared. Based on a theory, he was ordered by the government to start working underground. Many people believe that this is true, although there is no evidence for it. The director thought about it. Looks like they're gonna have to reveal this kid's real identity. Because Duke and Geno were old acquaintances. They joined the ranks of the Saint Knights at the same time, and in the blink of an eye, they became rivals. They all perfected their abilities in the hope of overcoming each other. Duke changed his chair and announced his verdict. Except, before Ars Vilsert could break the news to his father, he met at Parkino's private club where Janus Vilsert dragged him. He really wanted to drink to your success. When they sat down, the old man said he was surprised. I didn't think he could enter the Royal Academy of Magic. The girl who serves snacks was also surprised. She never thought Nighthawk would become a student. She assumed that all the guild's superiors would fall off their seats when they found out about it. Her name was Marion. She was another killer with more experience than ours. She has worked under the name Leopard, but recently retired from first-rate work instead of going into espionage. This girl helped Ars Vilsert as a child. As her father was busy working, she taught the basics of magic. Janny told Ars there was nothing wrong with brute force. The days of fancy tricks are long gone. It doesn't matter if he's underground or not. He needs a qualification. This is a trick to a calm and peaceful life. Marion noticed that after all, her work also changed a lot. Even the Parkinos had cooled off from what had been before. Ars Vilsert recalled that when he joined the guild, Parakinos was a place of illegality. There's a saying that some people can't live without darkness. the villains of society began to escape the strict rules of capital and settled here, and so this city has become a crime scene, which led to the birth of the organization now known as Gilda, created to take care of works that are very confusing for the sacred knights. The guild is also known by another name, Royal Decree, which indicates its state origin. For the past 10 years, Guild has been secretly working to exterminate the most dangerous inhabitants of Parakinos. Most people are afraid of mere mention of his name. Thanks to that, the number of people doing hasty things has decreased. At this moment, an explosion was heard and a group of people entered the restaurant through a broken hole in the wall. The boss said everything here now belongs to the Bruno family. He knows this club has money. They told all the clients to be nice and put all their shit in the bag. The Wilsard of Janie told his son not to stress. Ars Wilsard thought far away that any moment of peace could one day be interrupted meaningless. Besides, they were very unlucky. He doubted that they expected guild members on the second floor. It looked like the attackers were some of the new color gangs. Color gangs, this term, is given to several groups of delinquents wandering the Black City. Each group works under a different color, often wearing clothes of the appropriate color. Apparently, Bruno's family chose blue. Getting up from the seat, Dad asked if he needed any help. Ars Wilsard put on a mask and said he could do it himself. Ars Wilsard asked Marion to put the renovation of the restaurant in his account. The girl said she'd do it, but only today. After that, the young man began dealing with the rapists of the order. They did understand where this kid came from. In the first few minutes of the fight, Ars realized that these guys were too strong for ordinary people. Probably because they're on drugs, it seems that they also increase their combat skills, among other things. Ars Wilsard continued to beat the bad guys, destroying everything that came to hand in his way. Even if they're drugged, they are still ordinary civilians, and they don't deserve to get their guns dirty. It was controlled by improvised fists and means. The bandits noticed that this man was wearing a mask, and in the compartment so hard, it must be him, it's Nighthawk. The boss said that with the power given to them, there was no way to lose. Ars Wilsard was surprised. What was given to them and by whom? Turns out some more serious organization is behind these punks. The leader exclaimed that there was only one enemy, and if they surrounded him, he would be finished. He attacked his youth and shouted at him to prove his death. Suddenly, the bandits saw that Black Hawk was missing. Ars realized that some of these thugs could use magic, but they were still only third-rate magicians. Finally, the bad guys realized they couldn't defeat this man. They decided to back off. Marion was in shock. After what you've done here, it's going to take a long time to clean up. Ars screamed after the runaway bandits who shouldn't think of running away. He didn't spare their lives out of kindness. He had to find out who was behind the invasion. The girl asked, would this monster be okay if he lived the life of an ordinary student? The old man said he was getting a little worried. This guy's a real man, Ars whispered by surprise, so that's who he is, the Crow of Brave Stars. The morning after the incident in Dark City, it was time for the Royal Academy of Magic entrance ceremony. Ars Wilsard carefully tied the tie in his uniform and thought that after all, he would actually go to school. After a long climb up the hill, he passed through the gym gate. When he entered the hall where all the students of the academy were gathered, he noticed that the air was excessively pompous. He started looking for his place. A girl waved at him, and he recognized her as Ryua. That was Rinna's friend. The girl was very happy that Ars also passed the entrance exam. Rinna was here too. Her red hair was pulled back into a beautiful hairstyle that stood out among the students. Ars Wilsard noticed there were a lot of people in the hallway. Ryua replied that it was because there were other guests present besides exams. The young man asked who the guests were. She replied that these were students who had received an exemption from the entrance exam. They are the ones who have power and power at the same time. The real elite, simply put. Many of the exams were already high-ranking aristocrats. Ars Wilsard didn't know there were people above them. Has excelled even more now. Suddenly, trepidation, fear, and anxiety filled the hall in no time. The reason for this anxiety, and strange emotions were the footsteps of a single person, Director Duke Academy. He addressed the students and said he was grateful for the opportunity to receive them. Looking at Duke, Ars guessed that the man must be somewhere about 40 years old, the same age as his father. Just a look at the way he walks is enough to tell you how powerful he is. His muscles are like steel, tempered, which can only be obtained through real battles. A magical energy flowing from your body is always smooth and stable. So there are some people in this academy who can fight, after all. Ars Vilsard heard Director Duke's voice again. He said there was an unchanging phrase known as the commitment of the aristocracy. Today, the term is easily misrepresented and used by many. But those born with the ability to use magic must protect those born without it. Here's your original knowledge. The director emphasized that those words became one of the rules of this academy. They 150 people who were chosen to protect the weak. The director said he would like everyone to remember that when they dedicated themselves to studying at this academy, he once again remembered the 7th rule of the Royal Academy. Those born with the ability to use magic must do anything to protect those born without it. The audience began to applaud. That was the end of the director's speech. Arsu, as a commoner, found all this hypocritical. The young man heard the conversations in the hallway. Those gifts talked about the fact that the director was a commanding knight. Ars Vilsard understood why Duke left such a strong impression after his presentation. That's because Hezen exhorts. Knights and guilds exist as two sides of the same coin. They were founded to carry out the work of knights, which is too dirty for them. No wonder a banal phrase came from a guy like him. Ars knew that with the end of the entrance ceremony, class division would begin. New students will be divided into 5 classes from Atoi after this happened. Turns out his girls, Reen and Rua, were in the same class as Ars. Rua added that it is very nice to be with Ars, and the young man thought that he kept bumping into these two since the entrance exams. After that, the teacher suggested moving on to dating. She said her name was Liara. She'll be their teacher for the next few years. Ars was happy to think that his teacher was not like Babuhara, and it seemed that some teachers were taking care of his figure. Then the teacher explained the basic points system of the academy. She suggested everyone check their student cards. Ars Vilsard obediently took his card. Liara said the letters SPI represent the points of her notes. This means that from now on, each of them will compete with others, putting their SPIs at risk. Ars sighed and thought about how the survival of the fittest was beginning. Liara thought for a second and apologized for the previous sentence, which seemed rude to her. She said I should rephrase. She didn't recommend fighting. Their SPI is a numerical representation of their scores. Your advancement in the academy career will depend on this number. Besides, those with high grades will have special privileges. Everyone should try to get them in any way available. Ars Vilsard thought this system is very much to your liking. He just hopes the nobles won't have any more benefits here either. Although maybe that's just a wish. But still, your school life has begun. There were still a few things to get used to, but once he got his hands on, his school life was quite comfortable. During the day, he was in class, and at night he worked for Parakinos. Even after the last incident at the club, he was very busy. The gang leader was found with the remains of a drug called DD. On the one hand, the user of these drugs feels an extreme degree of euphoria, and on the other, makes it possible to use the user's hidden combat skills. All these qualities help D gain reputation as the most dangerous drug in history. If there's anything he complains about at the gym, it's classes. The teacher's speech in the lectures takes him to sleep. He didn't have time to write down the teacher. Your friends also said that classes here are on a different level. Arsvilsard had a different opinion. He didn't think it was because there was a high level of training. It's just that Professor Bubahara has no desire to teach anyone. The young man was terrified that he would actually have to endure it for 3 years. It's horrible. While Arsvilsard was sitting at Professor Bubahara's lecture, he suddenly heard him talking to him. Bubahara told him to go to the blackboard and set an example. The young man thought he had called him to the blackboard, as he noticed he wasn't paying much attention to his speech. Meanwhile, the teacher pointed out a question to him and said he should put his joint venture at stake. If he answers, he gets 100 spi. However, if he does not respond, he will lose 100 spi. In short, he'll be on the shortest path to fail this school year. Arsvulsard now understood Bubahara's purpose. He read the problem and realized that it was definitely not something that could be found in his textbooks. He was sure the teacher thought that no one in this class would be able to solve this problem. However, Arsvulsard solved this problem very quickly, and I thought that for him such a question is no more difficult than a walk in the park. In addition, the young man pointed to the teacher that in his task, the magic circle had several flaws, and he corrected them. Bubahara was so angry, he almost had a heart attack. He praised Ars forcibly allowed him to return to his place. The teacher tried to hide his emotions, but it was written on his face. Bubahara was forced to give the young man 100 points, and his rank was raised from F to E. When Ars came to his place, he noticed some parallel looks from fellow practitioners launched towards him. But he couldn't blame them. He doubted that they would be happy for a commoner who was able to take first place. During lunch break, Arsvulsard went to the Academy's underground cafeteria. For lunch, there was roast duck with red wine sauce. Whatever it is, lunch break was the most expected event of your school life. The huge amount of food that was served for a normal school lunch was simply shocking. He was serving the dishes, heard his students whispering about him. Arsvulsard is already used to this kind of treatment. Although, considering he doesn't make many friends, it's good for him. When he was about to start eating, Rinna and Rua came to him. They asked me to sit with him. Rinna sat in front of him, and Rua sat next to the boy. Arsvulsard was surprised by the enormous size of the pasta that Rinna had. He asked her about it. The girl said there was nothing she could do. Brain activity requires a lot of energy. Arsvulsard thought he now understood the reason for his good form. Once again, it seemed to him that they had met somewhere before. But he couldn't remember. He was afraid to get that annoying sense of déjà vu. From the corner of his eye, Ars saw two students looking at him jealous. Looks like he became the envy of the male half of the students. That doesn't make sense, considering Rinna's appearance seems to be the only refined feature she has. Roy, however, said it was absolutely incredible in last class. Then she asked where he had learned such magic. Arsvulsard answered that it was none of her business. The girl asked him not to be so bad. After all, they were in the same class. It must be fate. Ars thought this girl, Ryua, was very annoying despite her appearance. Then Rinna turned to the young man and told him that she and Ryua would form a group to complete tasks. Would he like to join them? The young man was surprised. He asked Rinna what tasks he was talking about. She replied that the Royal Academy of Magic accepts several tasks out there. If students can complete a difficult task, they will be rewarded with a large number of spies. There are different ways to get a joint venture. Ars happily thought about what it meant. There was a way he could finish school without even taking these useless lessons. Rinna added that completing such tasks is mandatory for high grades. And they're going to start today. Ryua immediately made a list of available tasks in front of him and invited Ars to choose what he liked. He looked at the list and realized that most of the tasks were focused on hunting monsters or catching criminals. They're all forced to risk their lives. After Ars reviewed the list, Rinna asked what he thought of her. The young man said to give up. Trying to complete these tasks with your power level will be similar to suicide. It's like dropping a couple of sheep to catch a wolf. The result is obvious. Ryua asked him resentfully, does he mean they're just sheep? Arsvulsard replied that his lack of self-preservation makes it worse. None of these tasks are close to being suitable for rookie magicians. And this criminal hunt is especially scary. If the girls took on this task, they'd definitely be eaten alive. He couldn't let that happen, he thought. Rinna, meanwhile, cried and said she didn't know anything about them. So she turned to her friend and said they were leaving. She was supposed to count on a stranger was a bad idea. Ars whispered after them that he would definitely make up. He was sure they had their own circumstances, but he didn't care, he was already busy with his work. he doesn't have time to worry about his colleagues. Work comes first.